Today we're gonna do Telltale Walking Dead characters' evil tier list. I'm gonna be completely honest here. Starting with Andy first off, let's talk about the St. John Dairy Farm. Andy and his family present themselves as this warm, welcoming group offering sanctuary to Lee's group. Fresh food, safety, a sense of normalcy. It all seems too good to be true. And guess what? It is. The big reveal that they're actually a bunch of cannibals is one of the most disturbing moments in the series. Andy's family has been luring in survivors, killing them, and serving them up as dinner. That's pretty messed up, even by post-apocalyptic standards. Now, you might argue that in a world gone to hell, people do what they must to survive. I get that. But here's the thing. Andy and his family didn't just stumble into cannibalism out of desperation. They chose this path and set up an entire system around it. They're not just eating people who died. They're actively trapping and slaughtering human beings. There's a level of premeditation there that pushes it from survival instinct to calculated evil. Let's not forget Andy's role in all this. He's not some reluctant participant. He's actively maintaining the electric fence to keep their livestock from escaping. He's the one who tries to sacrifice Danny to the walkers to cover their tracks. When Lee confronts him in the barn, Andy doesn't show remorse. Instead, he's angry that his way of life is being threatened. He genuinely believes what they're doing is right. Another point to consider is the psychological trauma he inflicts. Think about Clementine, a young girl who's already seen too much horror. Andy and his family almost made her eat human flesh without her knowledge. That's not just physical harm. It's a deep psychological scar that could affect her for life. Even in his final moments, when Lee has him at his mercy, Andy doesn't seek redemption. He taunts Lee, trying to push him into becoming a murderer too. It's like he wants to drag everyone down to his level, to prove that in this new world, everyone's morality is as warped as his. Now, I'm not saying Andy is the most evil character in gaming history. There are definitely villains out there who've done worse on a larger scale. But in the intimate, personal world of The Walking Dead, where every decision and relationship feels so impactful, Andy's actions stand out as particularly sinister. He betrays the trust of vulnerable people, participates in murder and cannibalism without hesitation, and shows no sign of inner conflict or regret. In a narrative that's all about the blurred lines between right and wrong, Andy plants his flag firmly on the wrong side. But hey, that's just my opinion. Maybe you see Andy differently. Let's continue with Ben Paul. Now, putting Ben in the somewhat evil tier might raise some eyebrows. After all, he's just a scared kid trying to survive, right? Well, yes and no. Ben's actions, while not malicious, do have serious negative consequences that can't be ignored. The big one is his secret deal with the bandits. Ben was giving them supplies in exchange for the safety of his classmates who were already dead. His intentions weren't evil. He thought he was protecting his friends. But in doing so, he unknowingly put Lee's entire group at risk. Those supplies could have kept them safe and fed. Instead, they went to dangerous people who later attacked the motel. Then there's the incident in Crawford. Ben removes the hatchet that's holding back a bunch of walkers, without thinking about what it's there for. This mistake nearly gets several people killed. Again, it's not that he wanted anyone to get hurt. He just didn't think through the consequences of his actions. But the moment that really pushes Ben into somewhat evil territory is Duck's death and Katjaa's suicide. Ben's supply deal led the bandits right to them. His actions, though indirect, resulted in a child being bitten and a mother taking her own life. When he finally confesses, it's clear he feels genuine remorse. But at this point, the damage is catastrophic. You could argue that Ben is more foolish than evil. He's young, scared, and makes terrible decisions under pressure. But in a world where one bad call can mean life or death, there's a level of responsibility he can't escape. His choices repeatedly endanger and harm others. So while he's not twirling a mustache and plotting grand schemes, his actions do place him in that somewhat evil category for me. Now let's talk about Brenda St. who I believe earns her place in the devil tier. If Andy was the operational side of the St. John's cannibal operation, Brenda was its heart and soul, and what a dark soul it is. First off, Brenda is the matriarch. In many ways, she sets the moral tone for the family, She's not some subordinate following orders, she's a driving force behind their heinous practices. When Lee discovers the truth, her response is chilling. She calmly explains their philosophy. Meat is meat. She's rationalized cannibalism to the point where she sees no difference between a cow and a human being. What's even more disturbing is her motherly facade. Brenda goes out of her way to appear kind and nurturing. She speaks softly, offers home-cooked meals, and gives off this warm, maternal vibe. This isn't just a survival tactic, it's a carefully crafted lie. She uses the image of the caring mother to lure people into a false sense of security. In a world where trust is rare, she exploits people's yearning for comfort and safety. Consider her interaction with Lee in the house. Even after he knows the truth, she keeps up this gentle act. She talks about the old world's morals as if they're quaint relics, suggesting that in this new reality, eating people is not just acceptable, but wise. Her calm demeanor as she says these things is bone-chilling. It's like listening to a devil who doesn't wear horns but a warm smile. Then there's her treatment of Mark. This guy helped her family, and how does she repay him? By carving him up while he's still alive. She serves his legs to unsuspecting guests, including children. When Lee confronts her, she's more concerned about the food getting cold than the horror she's committing. That level of detachment is truly sinister. What lands Brenda in the devil tier for me is her complete corruption of traditionally good values. Motherhood, hospitality, community. She takes these virtues and twists them into tools for unspeakable evil. She doesn't just commit bad acts. She redefines morality itself to suit her needs. In her world, kindness is a trap, family bonds are a facade, and human life is just another resource to consume. Next, Bree. Now, Bree isn't a major character, but in her short time, she shows a strong moral compass. She's part of the cancer support group that's holed up in the truck stop. When Roman suggests they start robbing other survivors, Bree is one of the few who stands up against it. She argues that doing so would make them no better than bandits. Even in a world where resources are scarce, she holds on to her principles. She'd rather take her chances than resort to stealing from others who are also struggling. That kind of integrity in tough times? That's good tier material. Next, we've got Chet, another brief but impactful character. We meet him in the very first episode when he's helping Sean clear the road near Clementine's house. Despite the chaos of the early outbreak, Chet is out there, working with others to make paths safer. When Lee and Clem approach, he doesn't immediately treat them with suspicion. There's an openness to him, a willingness to help strangers even when it could be risky. Whether you meet him as a walker or a living person, his presence reminds us that there were good people trying to maintain order in those confusing early days. Moving on to Christa. She's been through a lot, losing Omid, dealing with a difficult pregnancy in a post-apocalyptic world, but she doesn't let her hardships turn her cruel. When she joins Lee's group, she's understandably cautious, but she doesn't exploit or betray them. In fact, she becomes a strong, rational voice within the team. She's often the one advocating for careful planning and smart resource management. After Omid's death, despite her grief, she takes on the responsibility of mentoring Clementine. She teaches her survival skills but also tries to preserve her humanity, like when she objects to Clem using a gun. Christa is tough, yes, but her toughness comes from a place of wanting to protect and guide. And now, the heart and soul of the series, Clementine. From the moment we meet her, it's clear she's something special. She's a child thrust into an unimaginably horrific situation, yet she maintains a core of goodness throughout. In Season 1, her kindness and trust in Lee provide a moral anchor for him. She brings out his best qualities. As she grows, we see her adapt to the harshness of her world without losing her compassion. She makes hard choices, like mercy-killing Lee, but they don't harden her heart. In later seasons, Clem becomes a leader and protector, especially to AJ. She teaches him crucial survival skills, but also grapples with how to keep his humanity intact. Remember her telling him, "We don't kill the living?" Even after years of trauma, she's trying to uphold a moral code. Clem forms deep bonds, stands up to tyrants like Joan and Lily, and always tries to find a better way. She symbolizes hope, the idea that even in the darkest times, goodness can not only survive, but flourish. Now, let's take a sharp turn to Danny St. John, who absolutely belongs in the devil tier. If Brenda is the twisted heart of the St. John's operation, Danny is its cold, calculating brain. From the start, something seems off about him. He's too eager to bring strangers back to the farm, always volunteering to help in ways that isolate potential victims. But it's in the meat locker that we see his true colors. Danny doesn't just participate in cannibalism, he's an enthusiastic proponent. He talks about human beings as if they're livestock, even using terms like processing. There's no trace of conflict or remorse. In fact, he seems to enjoy the power it gives him over others. He's not just eating to survive, he's reveling in his position at the top of this new, perverse food chain. What really cements Danny's place in the devil tier is his encounter with Lee in the barn. Armed with his beloved rifle Charlotte, Danny is more than ready to kill. But it goes beyond self-defense. He toys with Lee, setting up a sadistic game where Lee has to choose between shooting him or saving Clementine and Kenny. He wants to force Lee into an impossible moral dilemma, not just to save himself, but to prove that everyone can be pushed to his level of depravity. Even more chilling is Danny's implied history. There are strong hints that his evil predates the apocalypse. Jolene, the woman who's been watching the farm, suggests Danny has a dark past involving young girls. This isn't stated outright, but the implication is deeply disturbing. It suggests that Danny was already a devil before the world fell apart. The chaos just gave him more freedom to act on his worst impulses. Herschel. Good. In his brief appearance, Herschel shows genuine compassion. He takes in Lee's group despite the risks, offering food and shelter. When Duck is mistaken for a walker, Herschel doesn't shoot first. He calls out to verify. Even after Sean's death, which he understandably blames on Lee, he doesn't seek violent revenge. He asks them to leave, showing restraint in his grief. Herschel's farm represents an attempt to maintain civility and kindness in the early chaos. Katjaa. Good. As the group's moral center, Katjaa consistently chooses compassion. A skilled veterinarian, she uses her abilities to help others, like when she treats Duck after his brush with death. She advocates for saving David Travis at the dairy, even when it's risky. Katjaa's nurturing nature extends beyond her family. She offers emotional support to many, like consoling Clementine about her parents. Her tragic end doesn't negate her inherent goodness, but rather shows how this harsh world can overwhelm even the kindest souls. Kenny. Neutral. Oh, Kenny. He's all over the map, isn't he? One moment, he's fiercely defending his family or backing Lee unconditionally. The next, he's making rash decisions that endanger the group. Kenny's heart is often in the right place. He deeply loves his family and friends. But his method? That's where it gets murky. He'll abandon Sean to save Duck, leave Lily behind after she murders Carly, and push to steal from a seemingly harmless stranger. Kenny's not evil. He's just incredibly pragmatic about protecting his own. His intentions are good, but his actions often veer into questionable territory. Larry. Evil. Larry is a piece of work. Even before the apocalypse, it's hinted he was a harsh, uncompromising man. In this new world, those traits become downright menacing. He's quick to condemn Lee based on his past, even threatening to expose him to the group. When food is scarce, Larry prioritizes himself and Lily, showing little concern for the children. His most chilling moment? Attempting to leave Lee to die in the drugstore despite Lee saving Lily. Larry's not a cannibal or a murderer, but his callousness, prejudice, and willingness to let others die put him firmly in the evil category. Lee. Neutral. Now, some of you might be surprised to see Lee in neutral rather than good. Here's my thinking. Lee's alignment is largely up to the player. His past, killing a state senator, already puts him in a morally complex space. Throughout the game, Lee can be compassionate, like caring for Clementine, or ruthless, like killing the St. John's in cold blood. He can be honest about his past, or deceptive. Lee's ultimate trajectory depends on our choices. He has the capacity for great good or significant darkness. Lily. Evil. Lily's descent is a tragic one. Initially, she's a strong leader trying to keep the group safe, albeit with a harsh pragmatism. She rations supplies strictly and distrusts newcomers, but it comes from a place of protection. However, her methods become increasingly extreme. She harshly interrogates Ben, turning the group against each other. Then, in a moment of high stress, she murders Carly Doug in cold blood. It's an impulsive act, but she shows no immediate remorse. Later, in Season 4, we see she's fully embraced villainy, brainwashing children for her raider group. Lily's fall from a flawed protector to an outright antagonist is what puts her in the evil tier. Molly. Neutral. Molly is the quintessential survivor, adapting to solo life in Crawford's harsh environment. She's skilled, resourceful, and intensely self-reliant. Molly's not malicious. She doesn't go out of her way to harm others, but she's also not rushing to help. Her philosophy is, look out for number one. She initially uses Lee's group for her own goals in Crawford. Yet she's not without compassion. She saves Lee from a walker and later opens up about her sister. Molly's neutral alignment comes from her strong self-interest, balanced by occasional acts of kindness. Omid. Good. In a grim world, Omid is a ray of sunshine. He maintains his sense of humor and optimism despite the horrors around him. More than that, he's genuinely kind. Omid is quick to trust Lee's group, offering his engineering skills to help. He shows courage, like when he volunteers to cut the tanker down. Throughout, he's a stabilizing presence, often diffusing tensions with a well-timed joke. His gentle nature is most evident in his relationship with Christa. Omid's ability to find light in darkness, without compromising his ethics, makes him a solid good. David, somewhat evil. From 400 Days, David's tale is one of moral erosion. As a former soldier, he initially seems to have a strong ethical code. He's part of the cancer support group, people who banded together to help each other. However, David goes along with Roman's plan to rob other survivors. While he expresses doubts, he doesn't strongly oppose it like Bree does. If he executes Roberto, it shows he's willing to kill to protect his newfound community, even when alternatives exist. David's not a sadist, but his gradual acceptance of ruthless tactics for the greater good nudges him into somewhat evil. Stranger. The Stranger, or Campman, is a study in obsession and manipulation. Yes, his origin story is tragic. Lee's group stole his supplies, indirectly causing his family's death. That loss would make anyone vengeful. But the Stranger takes it to an extreme, stalking the group across multiple states. He doesn't just want revenge, he wants to psychologically torture Lee. Over the radio, he plays mind games with Clementine, exploiting her innocence to turn her against her protectors. When he finally confronts Lee, he attempts to rewrite history, painting himself as a savior. His plan to abduct Clem, to mold her into a replacement for his dead daughter, is deeply disturbing. The Stranger's methodical manipulation and willingness to exploit a child's trauma for his delusional goals? That's devil-tier behavior. Travis, like his teacher David, starts in a good place. He's a high school student trying to navigate this nightmare with his classmates. When Ben's group is attacked, Travis doesn't abandon his injured teacher. Instead, he risks his safety to help David, showing loyalty and compassion. At the motel, Travis doesn't cause trouble. He's portrayed as quiet, perhaps shell-shocked by recent events. His goodness is seen in his initial actions, helping a friend despite danger, and his subsequent peaceful coexistence with Lee's group. Vernon is a tricky one. As a doctor maintaining a cancer support group, his baseline seems good. He offers his medical expertise to help Omid and later performs a C-section on Christa in the comics. Vernon advocates for ethical behavior within his community, opposing Crawford's brutality. So, why somewhat evil? It's his final actions. Vernon takes advantage of Lee's group being in disarray to steal their boat. He knows they're in dire straits, with some injured and a child to protect. Yet he takes their only escape route. Later, it's revealed he lied about being held at gunpoint. Vernon's decision to save his own by dooming another group, one that had previously helped him, pushes him into morally gray territory. Whew, that was a lot to unpack. What strikes me is how The Walking Dead doesn't just present black and white choices. Characters like Kenny or Lily start in one place and end up somewhere very different. It reflects real life, where people are shaped by their toughest moments. But I want to hear from you. Do you think Lee deserves to be in good despite player choices? Is Vernon's medical help enough to keep him out of the evil category? Maybe you see Kenny as chaotic good rather than neutral? Drop your thoughts below. This is what makes The Walking Dead so compelling. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this, and I'll meet you in the next video. Also, make sure to like it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.